really appreciate that. And thank you for the witnesses coming here today. Mr. Cordair, am I saying that right, first of all? Perfect, thank you. So thank you for taking the time and sharing it with us. I want to go through a little bit in some of the details, and it seems like you handled the situation better than other passengers, but did you feel like you were adequately communicated with during the delay?
I would say so, but it kind of depends how you see it, right? They would give frequently updates, but some of the updates were like either we don't have an update, or we don't have any news, or we don't currently have a plan, which might introduce a bit more stress for the other passengers. I've gone through a lot of delays. I travel a lot through either train or planes, so I'm used to it. So it doesn't really stress me that much.
Yeah. So Justin, there's actually a twigged me to something else. If you don't mind me asking these questions. Well, you said you travel quite a bit, internationally, domestically. If you're okay sharing with us.
Yes, it's actually both. I go to Vancouver every month, and I do about 2 to 3 trips internationally every year.
How would you compare your experience in Canadian airports, Canadian trains, with some of the counterparts around the world, if you'd be so kind to share that with us?
So around the world, from what I've noticed, there is not really any delays compared to what we're used to. I frequently fly with Air Canada, within Air Canada, and there's always very often delays. Same thing with Via Rail. I recently went to South Korea, and I took the train there, and they were always on time. Which was quite impressive. And they have about like 30 trains a day from every cities, and they were always on time.
Thank you for that. And just to sum, so it's fair to say that your experience is that it's certainly above your you had more delays in Canada than what you've experienced internationally on average. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. We just want to move on to a little bit more of your experience, and apologies on behalf of the federal government that you had to go through this, right? As a member of Parliament here. You said that they had food, but it was relatively limited, like pretzels and stuff. Like at the beginning, did they have like sandwiches or anything, or you were just on pretzels for 10 hours or so?
So I was actually in business class, so I got a breakfast earlier on while the train was fine. But I imagine for the people in economy, they probably had only the pretzels for the whole time.
And then
I couldn't speak on.
I don't want to get too far down the line in grossness here, but you mentioned the washrooms got a little bit stinky. For how long were they, if you remember, how long were they not working? And I assume there was a point where they were just not usable for obvious reasons. But
I would say about an hour. The bathrooms were never closed, so even if they were stinky, people kept going there because I guess they really needed to go there.
Yeah, perfect. If I could just switch to you, Ms. Murray. You mentioned a couple things that I'll tell, at least to my understanding, directly contradicted what the CEO of Via, who was here a couple weeks ago, he said a number of times this was an isolated incident. Would you agree with that, or would you? Yeah, would you agree with that? I'll leave it there.
So thanks. I worked with the railway for a very long time, and I would say these super long delays, I wouldn't call it isolated. I would say less rare than other delays, but I would never call this an isolated one-off. This happens more than it should, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. And you said something that that I thought about and was a little surprised at the CEO's. He seemed to indicate that it would have been difficult or impossible to put enough food on a train for a prolonged delay. Just wondering if you had, with your considerable experience, would agree with that analysis, or whether it'd be possible to, just have granola bars or something. It's a little bit more nutritious than pretzels.
Yeah. Let's be honest, there probably is not enough space for there to be full meals put on the train, but supplies to, like you said, granola bars, something with sustenance, something that if you are delayed, because this is not the first time, to be prepared in the event that there is going to be long delays, that pretzels are not going to hold over. And for, even at the end of the day, for somebody to be walking through a car and saying, this is the last bit of water we have on this train, I think is quite revealing. But there, if there isn't room, we need to make room. We've got to find a way. There has to be a way that we're transporting humans here. And there's got to be a way to provide them with the necessities that they need when there are, significant delays such as these ones.
Your comment about we are transporting humans here. I think that's very well fitting, and I just would like to thank both of you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to start out with the question for Unifor. Of course, not too long ago, in my riding in Cobourg, a Via rail broke down under different circumstances. It wasn't mechanical, but weather this time. But there was a commissioned independent report. And there were a number of recommendations in those, and I was just wondering if Unifor had a position with respect to whether those recommendations have been adopted satisfactorily, or whether there's still work to be done.
For myself, I haven't been privy to that report as of yet, so I apologize, I cannot answer that question.
Mary, as well, are you aware? Is there anything you'd like to add?
I also have not seen that report, so I'm unable to respond as well.
That would be something I think that that VIA would be sharing with you, and hopefully working collaboratively with the workers that obviously keep the trains going. A little surprised they haven't, but thank you for that. I do want to say it was definitely awful for the passengers, and I'll have another question for Mr. Cordero in a second. It must have also been very, very difficult for the employees there, as stuck in the middle. It can be very difficult to be in a position where you're expected to help, but you don't have the tools to help people. I'm just would first of all like to say a thank you to the VIA workers who conducted themselves professionally, and all the rail workers who do that. Do you, and perhaps I'm putting you in an unfair position, but that's what politicians do, do you believe that VIA set your workers up for failure by having a lack of resources and a lack of plan with respect to this delay?
And I will comment, and I'm sure that Jen might also have a comment on this, but it is the employer's responsibility to keep the health safety of our members in check. That is their responsibility under the labor code, under the law. And so, yes, I would say that their lack of investment absolutely put our members in harm's way that day.
That another member asked you questions with respect to what you received as compensation. I believe you received a refund and then a ticket as well, or a free pass as well. Could you just clarify that?
Yeah, travel credit.
Okay, perfect. And so were you made aware of, or is there, to your knowledge, a complaint resolution? Like if you had wanted something more than that, did VIA advise to you that there was any right or any process that you could go through to acquire a greater compensation for your 10-hour delay?
No, they have not.
Okay, so it was they gave you the refund and I guess what do you call it, a ticket pass, or what was it?
Travel credit.
Travel credit, and that was that. And
Yeah.
yeah, okay. And so I want to also get just briefly back to some of your testimony with respect to the international travel you've done. So you said in South Korea that the trains were rarely on time. And you also had some testimony with respect to VIA. But I want to ask you, I guess, a specific question here, just in your own estimation, in your own anecdotal experience there. How often is a Canadian train, whether it be VIA or otherwise, late? Is 50% of the time, 20% of the time, 10% of the time?
For when I took it, I would say about 40% of the time that it's late.
So about 40% of the
Yeah.
time it was not on time, right? And I've got to imagine that's pretty challenging for you and for all members or for all passengers to be that type of late. Does that discourage you from maybe taking the VIA? If, like this time you were just, I understand, visiting Quebec City, but if you had an important business meeting, would you think twice about getting onto a VIA train?
So I typically take the train to get to the Montreal airport. And so what I do, I take the earliest train. So I try to have like a buffer of like 6 to 8 hours in case they have a big delay.
So you have to put an additional 6 to 8. I mean, it's good planning, and you're obviously a smart guy. But you have to add 6 to 8 hours if you want extra to take the train to hang out at the airport. And
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.